Now I have a class here. Public integer eval equal to 0. Public static integer b eval equal to 0. So I have taken a and b variables, where a is a non-static and b is a static variable. How the variable becomes a static? If we use the keyword called static, the variable becomes a static. If we use the keyword called static, the variable becomes the static key. Okay. Then go to the public void add. A value equal to a value plus 10, b value equal to b value plus 10. Then let us try to understand the execution of this program. I have taken two variables, a value and b value, where a is 0 and b is 0. A is a non-static and b is a static variable. I have written a program to execute this. So how did I write a program? Example e1 equal to new example. E1 dot add. E1 dot add. E1 dot add. Value. B value. Then again I'm calling. B value should not be like this. E1 dot a value. Example dot B value. Again. So this is how I created. So this is the program what I wrote, and I was trying to execute it. I wrote a program and I'm trying to execute it. Then when I execute the program, first it will check what are the classes we are using in this program. First it is going to check what are the classes that we are going to use in this program. There is a class called example class. In this class, do you have any static variable? Yes, I have a static variable called b. So Before you execute the program, the moment I click on the execute, before the system execute the program, first it will verify. Are there any Apex classes used in this? Yes. Example is the Apex class which we are using. If you are using the Apex class, does it have any static variable? Yes, it has one static variable. Then allocate the memory. Allocate the memory for the static variable on the name of class. Once you allocate the memory, then go to the first line. What was the first line? Example e1 equal to new example. Allocate the memory. So when you say new example, memory will be allocated. For whom the memory is allocated? Memory is allocated for non-static variable. E1. Memory is allocated for non-static variable. Then example e2 equal to new example. Eval equal to 0. And this is referred as. Now, what does it mean? First, memory for the static variable will be assigned only once. Memory for the non-static variable will be assigned as many times as you create object. Memory for the static variable will be allocated only once, and that is allocated on the name of class. Memory for the non-static variable will be allocated based on number of objects. If there are 10 objects, 10 times the memory is allocated. If there are 100 objects, 100 times the memory is allocated. I repeat. Please mute your mic. Vishal, mute your mic. Okay. Again, I repeat. Memory for the static variable will be allocated only once. Memory for the non-static variable will be allocated number of times based on number of objects. Again, I repeat, when you create an object, memory will be allocated for. When you create an object, memory will be allocated for non-static members only. For static members, memory will be allocated on the name of class. For static members, memory will be allocated on the name of the class. For non-static members, memory will be allocated based on the objects what we create. Depends upon the objects what we create, memory will be allocated. Right. Now let us see this. Then line number 1, e1 dot add. The moment I say add, e value equal to a value equal to a value plus 10, b value equal to b value plus 10. So when you look at this, a value equal to a value plus 10, b value equal to b value plus 10. So what is that A value? A value equal to A value plus 10, B value equal to B value plus 10. Now what is the one we called first line? E1 dot add. When I say E1 dot add, take the data from E1 and run the functionality called add. So when I told E1 dot add, so when you say A value, go to E1. In the E1, what is the value of A? 0. 0 plus 10. So it becomes then I told B value. E1 dot okay, B value. In the E1, there is no variable called B. In the E1, there is no variable called B. As there is no variable called B, as there is no variable called B, as there is no variable called B, then what happened? It goes to the static location. In the object, there is no variable called B, then it goes to the static. In the static, do you have any variable called B? Yes. B value equal to B value plus distance. Okay. Then when you say system dot debug E1 dot A value, what is the value of A? What is the value of B? What is the value of E2 dot A value? 0. So E1 A value is 10, E2 A value is 0, B value is 10. Then again I told E1 dot add. Again when I told E1 dot add, run the method called add by taking the data from E1. So what happened? A equal to A plus 10. 10 plus 10, 20. B, there is no B variable here, so it goes to static location. It goes to static location. B equal to B plus 10. Then, what is the value of A? E2 dot E1 dot A value is 20. B value is 20. Then E2 dot now E2 dot A value equal to 0. So look at this. Static is common for E1 and E2, but A is different for E1, E2. When I say E1 dot A add, it will take the A value of E1 only. The changes what I am making on A is only specific to that object. But the change what I am making on B is for both the objects. Because when I say B, even will go to static and take the B value. E2 also will go to this location and take the value. Because the B is the common variable for both the objects. B is the common variable for both the objects. Whenever I take any variable as a static, it is common for all the objects of the class. Whenever I take a variable as a static, it is common for every object of the class. Every object of the class. But when you take the variable as a non-static, it is only for specific object. It is only for the specific object. Now look at it. E2 dot add. When you say E2 dot add, take the data from E2 and add it. So A equal to A plus 10. B equal to B plus 10. The B has become 30. So B value can be used by E1 or B value can be used by E2. Both of them can use it. Both of them can modify it because it is static. Whenever I use a word called static, memory will be allocated only once. This is common for every object. This is common for every object. Every object can use it. Every object can modify it. Whenever I say static, it is a common for every object. Whenever I say static, it is common for every object. Whenever I say static, it is common for every object. Whenever I say static, it is common for every object. Again, I repeat, whenever I say static, it is common for every object. And all the variables can, all the objects can access that variable, all the objects can access that variable, modify the data. Whenever we say non-static, it is only specific to that particular object. I repeat all the points from beginning. If you define any variable as static, if you define any variable with the keyword static, then it is called a static variable. When you define a variable as static, memory will be allocated. Memory will be allocated only once, and that is allocated on the name of class. It is not specific to any object, it is specific to class. Whenever we define any static variable, memory will be allocated on the name of class, and it is common for every object of the class. Whenever I say non-static, whenever we create a new object, memory will be allocated for only non-static. Non-static variables are called using object. So if you want to call a value, I would say e1 dot a value, e2 dot a value, e1 dot c value, e2 dot c value. Whenever we say static, they are accessed using the class name. So example dot a value, example dot b value. Like that, with the class name we are going to call. Static variable is common for all the objects. Any object can call it, any object can modify it. Again, I repeat the points one more time. Listen to the points. Static is a keyword. If the keyword is used at the time of defining a variable, that is called a static variable. Static is a keyword. If you use this keyword at the time of defining a variable, then it is called static variable. When you define any variable as a static, memory will be allocated only once. For the static variables, memory will be allocated only once. All the static variables are accessed using the class name. Memory for the static variables will be allocated before the execution of the program. So let me put here. If you use this keyword, along with variable, if you use this keyword along with the variable, then memory for the static variable is assigned time of loading the class. Memory for the static variables only once. Static variables are referred non-static variables. Non-static variables based on the non-static variables will be allocated at the time of creating the object. Static is a keyword. If you use this keyword along with the variable, that is called static variable. Memory for the static variable is assigned at the time of loading the program. Memory for static variables will be allocated only once. Static variables are referred using the class name. Non-static variables are referred using object. Memory for the non-static variable will be allocated at the time of creating a new object. Right. So this is how static are created. Now let me explain in simplified format. Without program, let me explain it. Now let us see. I have a movie theater. Total number of tickets. Ticket cost. Available. Now, for this movie theater, there are 4 counters. 4 ticket counters. Let's see, 3 ticket counters. Now, I may purchase the ticket from counter 1, counter 2, or counter 3. Now, it's a movie theater. I may purchase the ticket from counter 1, counter 3. Now, look at the point. In the counter 1, I told total number of available tickets. Now, when I created it, it's not, when I say available tickets are 100, it's not that available tickets are 100 for counter 100, counter 200, counter 300. It's not, they don't get 300 tickets. Available tickets are only 100. Available tickets are 100. So all the 3 people are trying to use the same 100. All the 3 people are trying to use the same 100. So what happened in this case? Counter 1 booked 10 tickets. When counter 1 booked 10 tickets, what will happen? Number of available tickets are 90. Then you told print how many tickets, print available tickets 90. Here also I told print available tickets 90. Print available tickets 90. Why? It is a common for all the 3 objects. Now in the counter, if somebody went to counter 1, booked 10 tickets, then number of available tickets in all the 3 counters, if they open counter 1, you go to counter 1 or counter 2 or counter 3. If you ask how many tickets are available, there is a 90. Now counter 2 person booked 40 tickets. This person booked 40 tickets. Then immediately what happened? Available tickets are 50. Then if you go to counter 1 and ask how many tickets are available, they will say print 50. Go to counter 2 also, print 50. Because it's a common data. Available tickets are common data for all the 3 counters. Anybody make a change, if counter 1 or counter 2 or counter 3 make a change on available, that will be reflected to everyone. Then somebody cancel 5 tickets. Let's say somebody cancel 10 tickets. Then it will become available ticket equal to 60. So what was that? When you want some data to be common, when you want some data to be common for all the objects. When you want some data to be common for every object, then we make that variable as static variable. Are you getting my point? If you want some data to be common for all the objects and any change that is made should be reflected to every object, then we take that variable as static variable. Anyone has any query on this? Anyone has any query? Okay. Let me see.
Fish.
Yeah.
In the program, what you are referring object is, please?
Pardon me?
In the program, what you are referring as the object?
Object, creation of an object for a class. What was that? Example even equal to new example? No. What was this? Even now. Referring to the object, new example. This is the object which was created and I am referring it with the even. Example E2 equal to new example. Memory is allocated. It's an object which is created. I was referring that with E2. So E1 is an object, E2 is an object. Got it, boss?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me execute and show you. Static. Because I have used a variable with a keyword called static, it has become a static variable. Public static example. On this I will take straight away method. Then take this variable eval ten. I have taken initial values as 0, 0 and I am making equal treatment. I have taken a static variable, I have taken a non-static variable. I was giving a equal treatment for both the variables. I have taken two variables. And I was giving equal treatment for both the variables. Right. Now let us go to this. I will try to execute this program. Let us try to execute this. Static example even equal to new static example. Then I'm saying system.d1 a value e1 dot a value b value. Then I can take it. Here I have taken e2 dot add. So this is the program what I have taken. Now in this case, memory will be allocated a value equal to 0. e2 dot a value equal to 0. Whenever you say e1 dot add, what will happen? Take the data from e1 and perform the operation. Then e1 take the value from e1. e1 value is taken. So e1 dot a value equal to e1 dot a value plus 10. So it will become 10 here. Now there is no changes are made on e2 because we are making the operation on e1. Only the data of e1 will be modified. We will take a b static variable. Static variables are referred with a class because it is not related to any object. It is common for every object. There is a reason static variables are referred with the class name. Then it's 10. Again e1 dot add. Take the data from e1. What is e1? A value equal to 10. 10 plus 10, 20. e2, no changes are made on e2 because I'm running the operation on e1 dot add. Take the data from e1, make the changes. B equal to b plus 10, so it has become 20. Again, e2 dot add. Now I am taking the data from e2 and performing the operation called add. So by this time, what is the value of a? Same 20. No changes are made on a value of e1, 20, here also 20. But e2 a value is modified. B value is 20 plus 10. So what is happening? B value is modified by E1, B value is modified by E2. E1 can modify the B value, E2 can also modify the B value. Both the objects can take the data from static variable and modify it. Both the objects can refer to the static variable and modify it. B is common for E1, B is common for E1 and E2. Whereas A is not common for E1, E2. For E1, there is a separate E. For E2, there is a separate E. But B is common for both of them. So both of them can take the same B value and they can modify the value. So let me see the output. So look at this output, what we are getting. A value equal to 10, E2 dot A value equal to 0, B value is 10. E1 dot A value is 20, E2 dot A value is 0, B value is 20. E1 dot A value is 20, E2 dot A value is 10, B value is 30. So E1 has modified the value of B, E2 also modified the value of B. So it's both the objects can refer to the same variable and they can access it. I hope people are clear with this. Any queries you have, let me know.
Satish, can you please explain again that B1 value, that sentence again? I get a bit confusing.
Which statement, boss?
This second one and fifth one, or rest of the same. Just explain both the statement, two statement. Rest of the things are clear.
Line number.
Okay. line number 5 and line number second.
Okay.
Hmm.
Line number 5, e2 dot a value. What is the value of e2? Now when I told e1 dot add, take the data from e1 and perform the operation called add. So e1 dot a is, when you call it, what is the value? A value equal to now. Please mute your mic, Amma.
Huh.
A value equal to a value plus 10. From where should I take the a value? When I say e1 dot add means a value equal to a value plus 10, b value equal to b value plus 10. Now whose a value is this? Now I told e1. So take the a value from e1. E1 dot add means take the a value from e1. So it becomes what? E1, okay. E1 dot add means e1 dot a value equal to e1 dot a value plus 10. Now what about the b? B is not specific to, we don't have a separate b for e1 and e2. E1, okay, b is a common for e1 and e2. It's a static variable. It's a static variable. It's not a object. It's not a non-static variable. So static example dot b value equal to b value. So what happened? A value is 0. Okay, e1 dot a value equal to e1 dot a value plus 10. So it has become 10. Static example 0 plus 10. So b has become 10. That is how e1 dot a value is 10. Static example dot b value is 10. Now what about e2? What is the current value of e2? E2 dot a value is 0 only. Because we are making the changes on e1. We are making the changes on the data which is in e1. So only e1 a value is modified. E2 a value is not modified. Do you get my point?
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. Thank you.
Right.
Sir, can you say line number 6?
Line number 6. I give now here. Static example dot b value equal to static example dot b value. When you say e1 dot add, these are the statements which are running internally. Static example dot b value, it is 0 plus 10. So it has become 10 now. What it was?
Satish, can you, the system dot debug, that plus value, that all, could you explain, please? That bit confusion.
See, boss. You want to print anything plus variable. Whatever I give in single quotes, that will be printed. System dot debug. Then output will come as test. It prints column. Whatever we give in the single quote, that will be printed exactly. Then I give single quotes plus string plus variable. When I give string plus variable, whatever that is there in the string, that will be printed plus variable. What is the variable? A value. So what is the value of a variable? It is 10. Single quotes, whatever we write in the single quote, exactly that will be printed plus variable. When it's a plus variable, value of the variable will be printed. What does it mean? What is there in the single code? Salary colon is there, that is printed, plus variable salary. What is the value of salary? 9,000. Plus variable name. Plus variable name. There is a plus variable name. Whatever the value that is there in the variable, that value is printed. Is that was clear?
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay. So let us continue. Static methods. Static methods. So what is a static method? Right now what we have seen is defining the variable as a static. Now let us define static methods. Now generally I define here public void, sorry, call me method. Public void public static void invoke. Public void call me, public static void invoke. So if I use the keyword static before the method name, if I use the keyword static before the method name, the method becomes a static method. This is a non-static method. This is a static method. Generally, if you want to call non-static methods, how do you call? Create a object for this. Create a object for this. Even dot. So how the static variables are called? Static methods are called. How the static methods are called? Static methods will not be called with the object. Static methods will be called with the class name. If it is a non-static method, if it is a non-static method, we are going to call object dot method name. We are going to call object dot method name. If the static method, we are going to call class name dot method name. Static methods are called along with the class name. If we define any method as a static, they are called using the class name. If it is a non-static method, we are supposed to create an object and invoke it. Non-static method, we are supposed to create an object and invoke it. If it is a static method, we are going to call with the class name dot method name, class name dot method name. If it is static, we are going to call it as class name dot method name. If it is static, we are going to call class name dot method name. If it is a classic, we are going to create a class name dot method name. Let me execute it. Call me method, invoke method 1, invoke method 2. So non-static methods are invoked with the object, create an object for the class and invoke it. If it is static, then we are going to call object dot. So if it is static, we are going to call class name dot method. If it is a, if it is a, if it is a static, if it is a static, class name dot method. If it is a static, class name dot method. If it is a non-static, object dot method. This is how we are going to invoke it. Okay. Now we can use any variable here, no issue. Integer age. But in the static method, if you have any variables in the class, public integer eval, right. I'm defining public void show. If it is a non-static method, it can refer to every variable of class. It can refer to every variable of class. So method can refer to any variable of the class. The variable can be a static variable or non-static variable. Method can refer to any variable of the class. But if you go to static method, the display we can only use. Now look at this. I give a value equal to 10. So it's thrown error message. Why? Static method can only refer to static members of the class. Only the static variables of the class can be used in the static method. The static members of the class can only be used in the static method. We are giving here. We can use it. In the class will contain static variables and non-static variables. In the static method, we can only use static variables of the class. Within the method, you define whatever the variable, no problem. Here you can define whatever the variable. So look at the point. One thumb rule you need to understand. Local variables will not have any access modifier. Local variables not have any special keywords. Variables defined in the method will never have any public or private or protected like this. Variables defined in the method will never have a special keywords like static and final. Only the class variables will have access modifier and the special keywords. Variables defined in the class only will have access modifiers and static keyword, not the local variables. Now these are the local variables of the method. They will not have anything. So my question here is, which variables of the class can be used in the static method? Which variables of the class can be used in the static variable? So I am saying in the static method, only the static variables of the class can be used. In the static method, only static variables of the class can be used. So when you define any method as a static, it can be called with the class name. Static methods are called with the class name dot method name. Generally, non-static methods are called with the object. If I want to call any non-static method, create a object, then call it. If it is static, class name dot method name. Static methods can only use static variables of the class. Here, I'm defining here. This is a local variable in the method. This will not have any keyword called static or non-static. So we are not discussing the variables which we defined in the method. You can define any number of variables in the method and call it. We are discussing about the point in the class. In the class, whatever the variables you define, only static variables of the class can be used in the static method. Static method can only refer to static variables in the class. Static method can only refer to static variables in the class. Yes, someone is asking a question. Go ahead.
Satish, I think you wrote the sentence wrong. It will not have any special keywords, right?
Which one?
Above.
Sorry, yeah, you're right.
Local variables of
Yes.
not have any.
You're right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right, boss. Am I clear with this? Anyone has any query on this? Any variable defined in the method will not have any access modifiers or special keywords. We cannot define the variables like this. Within the method, you cannot define like this. This is not allowed. That are allowed only when you are defining a variable of the class.
Satish.
Yes.
Satish, in the last display method, you wrote the bval equal to bval plus 90.
Yes.
So it is a static variable. So it is not necessary to write this variable with the static with the class name.
We are using within the method. No. If you are calling outside, we need to use. See, now this within the class. If you want to use directly, we can use it. If you are calling outside the class, there is a question. See, they are the members of the class. They can be used directly. When you call them outside the class, then we will go for class name dot variable name or object dot variable name. Okay.
Okay.
Any other queries from anyone? Okay. So practically where we are going to use in the Salesforce, we'll see it in the Apex classes. Okay. When you go to VF and Apexes, we'll see how we are going to use this. Okay. All right, boss. That's all from my end for the day. We'll meet